Hi, my name is Jerry Vaisey. This show is I Can't Write right? And to the people who have talked to last time on the last show, have you started your story yet? You've got children, grandchildren, all your descendants are waiting patiently for their little treasure that you're going to write. And I've got Tammy Hetrick here. She wrote one that's a legend for your family. And it's called Stella Rose. And if you want your eyeballs to get washed out, anything like that, I suggest that you read it. Men don't cry, but I'll tell you, I got wet eyelids a couple of times. Tammy, what prompted you to start writing this book?
Oh, well, I've been writing basically my whole life, but the inspiration for Stella Rose came several years ago. So a dear friend of mine was battling leukemia, and she survived. And but we went through that experience together. She was in our writing group, and she had teenage children, so we were very similarly situated. And one day during that time, I noticed I had a bruise on my arm, and that can sometimes be a symptom of leukemia. And I had one of those oh my God moments, right? So what if I'm next? And my first thought was, you know, what would happen to my kids if something happened to me? And my son had left the nest already, but my daughter was just entering her senior year of high school. And I knew that my husband would take really good care of her, but I also knew I would want my best friend to be right there to help her through that last year of high school. And so in a moment,
men don't do very good with teenage.
Well, they.
I mean, they try hard.
He would do his best,
Yes.
but I would want her to have, you know, a strong woman's presence in her life, and so in a moment, the whole premise for Stella Rose just appeared in my head. You know, best friends, one of whom passes before she dies. She asks her best friend to take care of her 16-year-old daughter, and the story follows them through the next year of their life. So I knew that in an instant. The rest of it took a long time.
How did you come up with the letters?
So the letters, so there are letters through this story. Stella Rose is the friend who passes, and she can't bear taking her leave of her best friend and her daughter all at once. And so she leaves them a series of letters to be opened, one each month for the next year. And it was really, at first it was a device for me to really, during the writing, to really understand who Stella Rose was and to understand her relationship with both Abby and Olivia, Abby her friend and Olivia her daughter. And then the letters just became really compelling for me. But I thought when I submitted it to my editor, I thought she might say, oh, you know, that was a great device, but take the letters out. But she loved the letters, and I was so glad, because to me, they really are foundational to the story. And it's really helped me get reacquainted with letter writing. So, and in fact, I'm this month launching my letter writing revolution. So this Tuesday I'm doing an event at a senior center helping people write letters and really starting to encourage people to write letters again. So.
That's right up to what we're up for today. Hey people, you know, you better start writing, get a story together even if you can't.
Yeah, I love what you said in the beginning. You know, have you guys written your books yet, or your letters to your children and your grandchildren? It's really important not to lose this. You know, a lot of our communication through text messaging or emails, it's instant, but it's transitory. You write it and then it's gone. Yeah. As opposed to writing something down and leaving it as a legacy. So
my mother was a nurse after World War I, and my father was in World War I, and I knew some of the stories, and I had an uncle that liberated the camps in World War II, the concentration camps, and we got some of that information, but the great-grandchildren and that, it'll get lost.
Well, it will, and they're like movies about it, and there are books written about World War II. But imagine knowing that it was your grandfather or your great-grandfather that was in the midst of that. That really, it makes people, this generation, feel directly connected. And to me, that's the opportunity for us avoiding war, is feeling that connection to it, right? So
Definitely.
It's very important that you're pushing this
and
agenda.
especially, you talk about people that come back, like my uncle, liberating concentration camp leaves a mark on you forever. But talking it over with one of my brother's children, and going over it was so relieving to his mind. It was out of his mind and on paper,
Yes.
and it was a lot easier for him to live with. And I know there's a lot of people with PSD and all that. I would say, write it down, get it out of your soul, put it under the mattress. You don't even need to give it to anybody.
Right.
You just need to get it out of there and down.
Yes, that's true. There's something about when something just, it's living in your head, it just takes on these huge dimensions, right? And unexplored dimensions. But as soon as you discipline yourself to write it down, somehow it takes some of the energy out of what that is, and you can know peace again, I think.
That's one of the things I saw in your book, not knowing whether it was real or that.
Yeah.
And I understand you wrote it was a lot longer, and then you had the presence of mind to get professional help to
Yes,
get it
we all
from
need professional help as writers.
from a really good story, though, to get that polished. It's like a diamond that hasn't been made into a diamond. It's still in the rough.
Right, right.
And I could see the professionalism in it. I could tell that it was, okay, it's a really good story. It was written really well, but there's all these little things. It's like if I'm a do-it-yourselfer. If you do something yourself, that's fine. But if you have a finished carpenter, finish it.
Right.
They can tell.
Right. I really do. I mean, I admire people who can bring a book, I guess, from concept to writing it to a finished product themselves. And I think for a long time I felt like if I got professional help, if I had an editor help me, write this book, that somehow it wasn't mine anymore. But what I found out through writing this, when I got the manuscript finished, it was 550 pages, and I knew it was way too long. It's not an intergenerational saga. It doesn't need, it doesn't need to be 550 pages. To me, 350 was max for this type of story. And I also knew that I didn't have the skill. I had the skill to get it to 550, but I didn't have, it's a special skill to cut and to know how to do that. And when it's your baby, you can't even see it anymore for really what it is. You just know that it needs something, but you're so invested in every word because you sweat just as much writing the words that you have to cut as the ones that stay.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'll tell you, Stella Rose writing it gave me such joy and brought so much to my life. And I wanted so badly to bring it out to the world, but I wanted it to be the best it could be. So I really had to separate myself from the project and bring in a professional, right, to help me. I felt like I owed it to Stella Rose.
Yeah.
I owed it to the story to make it the best it could be.
It's like if I'm a videographer, so I do meetings and this and that, and the people in the meeting, they'll tell me when they see themselves through a different set of eyes, it takes on a whole different meaning. And I'm sure that, well, I imagine this is the same way, because I know you've got me convinced to have somebody else polish it up.
Yeah.
And
I think it takes a village. I mean, I think anything like an undertaking like this, right? There are editors. I mean, that's what an editor does, right? And I think that giving it to a friend or a first reader, first of all, giving someone a 550-page manuscript and saying, "Here, read that and tell me what you think," that's a lot to ask.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when you know it's a mess. It's still really messy.
Yeah.
And you know what? If they're your friend, they love you and they don't want to hurt your feelings, and they don't necessarily possess editorial skills,
Yeah.
right? They think, "Wow, that's a great book," But an editor has an eye. Their job, what they're being paid for, is to tell you what needs to be fixed in that book.
Yeah, maybe added too. I mean, not
Exactly.
not taken away.
Right. And where are you going? And to challenge you, right? To challenge, why is this in here? What did you mean by this? I mean, my editor made me answer some really tough questions. And that's her job. She did a great job. This book wouldn't be the book that it is if it weren't for her. So I really I got over myself and embraced the idea of having a partner to join me in this journey. And she was amazing, and she made me work really, really hard. So she didn't write the book, right? She just helped guide me and put the rails up.
Polish the diamond.
Exactly.
One of the questions I always want to ask is, I know from me trying to write, so far it's been an adventure, but what were the adventures you had writing it? Like, once you got it written and, like you say, you had the editor, it had to be exciting to go through that part of it as well.
It was. Writing it was exhilarating. And just, what happens next, and putting all of these thoughts, right, into this bucket. But I have to say that the editing process, as I started the unwriting, as I called it, so I would take these unwriting retreats, and the goal was, Tammy, you can't add anymore. So the goal, like my last one, my goal was to cut 100 pages, and I cut 70, so that was really good. But it's heartbreaking to just put big X's, on your manuscript. But at the same time, that was exhilarating too. And to take a paragraph that you just know is not working, or a scene, and you get up and you walk away from it, you're like, it's here, right? I can see it, but no one else can see it the way I'm writing it. But when you get it right, when you work it and work it and work it, and then finally you step away and then you come back and you look at it and you got it. There's nothing, that first writing it down pales in comparison to getting it right.
I do it on computer, so when I got something to cut,
you save
Control
it? Yes.
X, start a new thing. And I got like a zillion little...
I do too. I have all these different versions, right, of the manuscript, and then I have deleted scenes. So maybe one day on my website, I'm going to pull up all the scenes that my editor made me take out, right? They're there. They're still there.
Yeah, but it might help you, give you inspiration for the next book.
They could, and it's like we were saying. It takes just as much effort to write what you end up cutting as to write what stays. So it's hard. So you're right. With computers these days, it's so easy. Well, not so easy. It's never easy, but it's easier to cut stuff and put it aside because it's still there if you ever really need to bring it back.
But it's emotionally not easy, but it's just like Control X.
Control
V.
It's hard. It's hard. But in the end, when you give it to somebody, so I had given my daughter an early version, and then I gave her the freshly final edited version. And I asked her to read it through and see if she missed anything. Like, are there any gaps left? Because again, I'm doing this, for years, day after day after day. I can't even tell. Are there places that need to be sewn up? Did I take so much out that now there's a hole?
You can't see the forest through the tree.
Yes, and there were a couple of things that she brought up, but for the most part, she couldn't even tell what wasn't there anymore.
Ooh.
Which tells you it didn't need to be there.
Didn't need to be there.
Didn't need to be there. Yeah. So my editor did. I had two editors. One that helped me get it to basically a certain point, and then the editor with my publisher, and they both were amazing at their jobs. So.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And now, what would you tell the people out there about? Okay, hey, you just want to write a book and you don't even know what you're doing. What would you say to them to get them started?
Where you would even start? I guess my feeling is if you're writing, if you want to leave something legacy for your family, so if you want to write something about your parents or a brother, a sister, or yourself even, then, that's always an interesting place to start. Or even canvas your audience. If your audience is your family, what do you guys want to know about? What do you just have a brainstorming session with your family, and then something is going to come out of that, right? That's going to really engage you, and then it is just putting pen to paper. When I wrote the first draft of Stella Rose, it was during what's called NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month.
Oh.
It's every November. And there's an online community of over 100,000 writers doing this at the same time. And this year I did it again. It's the first time I'd done it. So I wrote the first crappy draft of of book number 2. But anyway, the point of NaNoWriMo is to just get that draft down. Don't be a perfectionist. Don't try to get that first line or 2 right before you move on to the next. Just write your heart out. Just write it, because then you have time to go back and just get the details right. But if you agonize over every line, this is my opinion at this point, and this was my experience. I had another novel before Stella Rose, and I had like 48 pages written over years.
Ooh.
They were 48 beautiful pages, but I was never going to finish it. And I had a writing teacher basically pull me aside and say that. Like, basically, if you keep going at this rate, you have 48 lovely pages, but you'll be lucky if you publish, or you publish posthumously, if you're lucky. You need to gallop through that first draft. That's how he put it, which was terrifying to me, to write something just crappy.
That's to a lot of people.
It was terrifying. So he told me that in September. I had the aha moment, the story idea in October, and then my best friend challenged me to NaNoWriMo, like the last week of October.
Oh.
We're doing NaNoWriMo in November. And so I didn't want to, I was scared to death, but I said, okay, I'll do it. And that's, in 30 days, I wrote the first draft of this. And that's what I would recommend to people. If it's around November, do NaNoWriMo, because then you've got a lot of support. But
how long did it take you to finish?
5 years.
So you did 30 days,
30 days.
did 5 years worth of polishing.
Exactly. So about 30 days for the draft, about 3 years to write it all out. Now remember, I have a full-time day job, right? And I had kids, still at home. It's no coincidence that I was actually able to finish it after, the kids were completely gone from the house. But so 3 years to write it, and then almost 2 years to unwrite it, to work with an editor for over a year and get it to where it needed to be, to give it to a publisher, and then find a publisher and work with that editor to get it down 20,000 more words. Whoa. So the whole process was a good 5 years.
Wow, that's long. Did you ever wake up in the morning or in the middle of the night with your story running through your mind?
Mm-hmm.
Like a herd of horses? Or?
Yes. So I'm a binge writer. So there are a lot of people who are very disciplined, and they write every day for 30 minutes a day or an hour a day. I am so envious of those people and admire them. I'm a binge writer, so my life is very busy. But what I would do is, like, when I'm traveling, if I have a long flight, I can't go anywhere. So I would write for hours, right? In those moments, in those types of situations. And then basically for 7 years, I took a week off and went away by myself to write. And I would really focus, and I would do nothing but work on this book. Those were the weeks when I would go to bed, thinking about Stella Rose, wake up and think I was Stella Rose. And, I was so immersed in it. So there were almost every Sunday. So every other Sunday I would meet with my girlfriend at Phoenix Books in Essex, and we would write for 2 or 3 hours.
Wow.
And, those, a lot of times on Sunday nights, I would go to bed with it full in my mind and wake up Monday with, more ideas and stuff.
Did you ever wake up and write it down, or you just remember it?
Oh, I would not write it down, and I would not remember it. So we should be, every once in a while I would write things down. I'd have to get up, like, with my eyes closed, go over to my desk and write it down a few times. I'm not very good at that either. That would be a great tip for people.
I tried the 5x7 card, did the same darn thing. You wake up and you gotta have that coffee before I write it down.
And then it's gone.
It's gone. Yeah, it was in the coffee, and then when the coffee is gone,
so is
it's
gone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
wow.
Exactly.
So you've really got me impressed on the fact that I might not think I can write, but I think I can learn how to write well. You've written a lot. I know I belong to a writers group, and that's helped me a bit too.
It does. It's great to have a support group.
Well, it's 2 pages. This is, you got 2 choices or 3 choices of what you're going to write on, and a month later you're going to come back and everybody's going to read it and the whole thing. Like,
so it better be worth reading, right?
I got this one lady that swore up down she couldn't write. I talked her into writing, and the last thing she wrote was My Secret Garden, her version, and all the rest of us are writers. We just sat there and listened to her, and it was just fantastic.
Yeah.
I says, I thought you said you couldn't write.
So I hope that inspired her to keep going.
Me too.
There's so many people with just amazing voice, right? That don't even know it.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you'll just see people write just something on a scrap of paper, and you pick it up and you're like, oh my God, it would take me a year to come up with this. So there's a lot of natural talent out there.
Well, I think if they start listening to, like you say, you get it out of your mind on paper.
Yeah.
And then you process it again. Finally, when you think you've got it as best that you can do it, you go take it to a professional.
Yes.
And is it that expensive to do?
Well, I'll tell you, so it's all relative, right? So I'm not going to say whether it's expensive or not. What I will say, though, is that what convinced me to do it, because, I don't like to part with my money either. But when I think about the money I blow on things that mean far less to me, and I thought about what I could invest in this. So I entered into this editing contract. I think it was like $1,800. It's a lot of money, but when I got my tax refund, I put a section of it aside, and I said, you know what? That's I'm doing this for myself. I'm doing this for myself and for my book, and it was the best money I probably spent in my entire life. When I think about money I've spent on silly things, and not so silly things, but things that didn't mean nearly as much to me, I think if for those who want to be all that they can be as writers, then we need to invest in ourselves. If it's really that important to us, right, then that's how I looked at it. Like, is this important to me? It is. So I'm going to invest in it. I'm going to invest in making this good, making this better, making myself, a better writer. And I have no regrets about it. So I would encourage people to do that. If they possibly can, set your tax money aside. It's tax time, right? Or set up a fund now as you're doing your writing.
My father was 3 packs a day.
Ah.
Now that was when it was 25 cents a pack. Okay. But then again, everything else was cheap. Well, money was worth something. Let me word it that way. If a person is 2 or 3 packs a day and they're writing, they may not smoke as much. That might be what it's
that
gonna
could be
take.
right.
Because my father would sit there, nothing to do. Okay, light up a cigarette, and I think he smoked about a pack and a half, but he burned up 3 packs because he'd start a cigarette and then he'd get interested in something. He'd put the cigarette down and ignore it. Well,
it's amazing how money can disappear that way.
Oh yeah.
Right? And kind of wasteful, or just not even thinking about it when
or
we
even
don't
going
even
out to eat.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you do something like set yourself up a writing account, and you have like a payroll deduction. If it's $10, $20 a pay period that you put in here, in 2 years that it takes you to write your book before you're even ready to have it edited, then you have the money set aside to hire an editor, and this person's going to be your partner, and they are going to get you there.
At $10 a week, you're right. For the length of time it took you to write it.
Yeah.
$10 a week in account, payroll deduction. You won't even know it's gone.
Don't know it's gone.
Put it in there.
Right.
And then whenever you think about your writing, you say, okay, I've got to get ready for the editor. I've already paid for the editor.
Right. It's paid for. And then some people are fortunate, right? They might have an editor in the family, or whatever. That's great. But I still caution against folks using family members. Again, it's hard when you have a relationship with someone. What I really appreciated about my editor was, she did her job. She did it really well. Like, didn't tell me, boy, this really stinks. You know, she had a really nice way with words, but she was definitely able to help me see where I was going off, you know, in the wrong direction and wasn't going deep enough. And I don't know that a family member, right, or a friend of mine would be able to do that. Even if they had the skill, would they be able to have a frank conversation with me?
How did you find her?
So actually, I looked at various online resources, but then I was having, you know, tea with my best friend who was talking about another writer here in St. Albans who used this editor in California, and I said, oh, I wonder if she's taking on new clients. So I reached out to her, and she does this interesting thing, and I think many editors do, and that is, she basically said, send me, I think it was 50 pages, send me the first 50 pages. She said she would look at it and she would write it up. If she was interested in the project, she would write it up. If she read the first 50 pages and she wasn't really into it, then she wouldn't take the project, which was great, which I would appreciate. Then she would write it up and send me her edits, and then I can look at it and see, do I like the way she gives feedback? So basically, it was a way to test drive each other. And so she took the first 50 pages, she liked what she saw, she edited the first 50 and she sent it back to me, and I loved the way that she told me this isn't right and this isn't right, but I liked how she told me. And when I read what she was saying, I trusted her. I trusted that she was right. I knew in my gut that everything she was saying was right. And so, you know, we negotiated a very fair deal, and she became my editor we were partners for 1.5 years.
She was just editing. She didn't publish it. She just...
No, she didn't publish it. She edited it, and then I found a publisher. And
now, did you have to pay to get? Was it like self-published or semi-self-published?
So publishing is a whole other like labyrinth, right? So a lot of people will send out like 100 query letters to publishers and hoping to, you know, you have to kiss a lot of frogs. I went out and kissed like 6. I sent out 6 query letters, and I'm like, this isn't getting me anywhere. And I was also about to turn 50, and I was like, you know, I had said I was going to publish by the time I was 30. I was going to publish by the time I was 40. You know, of course, I didn't have anything written, so it was hard to get published if I didn't have anything written. But now I had something written, I'm about to turn 50, and I'm like, I'm not going to wait for, you know, some publisher to discover some, you know, debut novelist up here in the middle of nowhere. So basically, I thought, well, I'll self-publish. A lot of my friends have self-published. So I looked into that, and I was just overwhelmed by the amount of, you know, the cover design, layout, e-formats. I'm like, I thought there was only one. There's all these different e-formats, and then there's distribution, right? How you distribute your book. And I'm thinking, there's no way I have time to drive my books all over and get them out of the trunk of my car, etc. So self-publishing, I became very discouraged. And then a friend of mine posted on Facebook that she got a publishing deal. So I called her, I'm like, who are you publishing with? And she said, She Writes Press, and it's a hybrid press. So there's this whole new world out there of publishing, of hybrid presses. And the thing about a hybrid press is that you're partnering with the press. So basically, all those things that were overwhelming me with like cover design and layout and proofreading, copy editing. I mean, again, you can have it edited, but then there's copy editing, which is like the fine stuff, right? And then there's distribution. So I paid for a package for that, and what I consider to be a very modest sum for them to take care of all those details. And then the big thing that they do is they have a sales force that goes out to the book expos and they sell in your book. So my book is sitting in bookstores in like North Dakota and Idaho, places I would never get to because of their sales force. They don't offer a ton of marketing, but neither does traditional publishing these days either, right? But they do attempt to sell your book in. And then the biggest thing that they offer is distribution through Ingram. So when I go into a bookstore and say, you know, I would love for you to carry this book. A lot of times when I go in and hand carry a book, the bookseller will say, well, here are consignment terms, and I can say, well, actually it's published, it has an ISBN number in the back, and it's distributed through Ingram, and it changes everything.
Oh.
Then they're like, oh, okay then. Because the big difference is through consignment is if they don't sell it, they call you and you either come pick it up or they pulp it, which,
You'll cry.
go. So with Ingram distribution, if the bookseller can't sell your book and doesn't want to carry it anymore, they can send it back for free. So they're much more inclined to take a chance on your book. So so that's how I did it, through hybrid publishing. So anybody can publish these days. You can self-publish or...
You just type in hybrid, and you just Google hybrid publisher?
Yes, and you will see, there are now several options out there. Yeah. So She Writes Press is one of them. They, as the name implies, it's run by women, and right now they're publishing just women. But there are other hybrid presses out there that will publish anybody. A lot of them will specialize in certain niches, but not all of them. So I would recommend to anybody, if you send out query letters and nobody bites, look into hybrid. Look into hybrid. It'll be another thing to put some money aside for.
There you go. Yeah, but sounds like you said, if you go out to eat once a week, or you put the money and write a book and do all the other things, would you say the entertainment value of actually an excitement of writing a book is enough of an entertainment as...
That's an excellent point. Yes. Yes, I would say, instead of going out, you know how much it costs to go to a movie these days,
yeah.
right? It's like $35-40, I have to have popcorn, and I have to have like the big popcorn. So it's so expensive, and yet I would get far more entertainment staying in at night and writing if I paid myself the $30, before you know it, then you've got your editor, and then you work with your editor, and meanwhile you're saving money for your publishing package with your hybrid press, that maybe is another $4,000 or $5,000, right, to do that. Again, a lot of money, but you're talking, unless you write a lot faster than the average, right, you have a year or two to save money and set money aside for something like that.
Well, then also you're putting $4,000, like you say, pour $4,000 aside, and if your book only sells enough to get $3,500 back, you've only spent $500.
That's true. That's another good point, right? So I remember my husband saying, so how much money are we going to make off this? And I'm like, we're not going to make any money off this book, especially a debut novel. It's done really well. My publisher is thrilled. I'm really thrilled. It's done better than I expected. But am I going to make $1 million off this book? Not likely. But what it's done for me is it has given me just the thrill of a lifetime. When I get emails almost every day from people that I don't know, and who say, I read your book, it made me cry, or not that I want to make people cry, but I guess I do.
There's a good cry and there's a bad
good cry, and that means that is worth every penny. Yeah. And
I've noticed, I've talked to you and I've talked to somebody else already on TV, that the confidence level you get after you've written something like you have, you've got a good level of confidence, and I'm sure you can turn a person around who is just like, a little timid, and then they get writing, and then they see, and if it's anywhere near successful, yeah. They get more like you are, that, okay, I know I can do something, yeah. And my little niche is different than everybody else's little niche, Yeah, it's confidence is a tough thing, right? So writers are artists, and we're just known for crises of confidence, of, oh my gosh. And I'll tell you, when this first came out, you still don't really know. You don't know until reviews start coming in. Reviews from people that you don't know, right? So when the reviews started coming in and they were positive, I was like, okay, I can go to Hannaford's and not think that people are going to avoid me in the hall, in the aisle, and think, oh my God, I read her book, it was so bad. I get that with this one. I handed a copy of it, and then I didn't hear from you because you were away. It says, she read it and she'll never speak to me again. You know?
I know. I feel bad. So I've been off the grid for like 3 weeks since we
you went to what, Europe or something?
Yes. Yeah. And so, but I did read, and I will tell you that Nancy was right. You do have a affection for commas. A lot of commas, yes. So, but you know, that's.
I had to straighten that one out. I'm sure.
And what I love is what I can feel when I read your writing is just your exuberance, right?
Yeah.
It's like we were talking earlier, and you know, I read the first few pages is about the chase on I-89, and the writing even was like 140 miles an hour, right?
So, it was too.
Yes, and so you know, so that's the raw. That's when you know that someone loves what they're doing. They love what they're doing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've gotten so I'm really fixed on Vaisey. I mean, I see things in that vein, you know, well, I've always been fond of redheads and real strong women, and so I think that comes out with Vaisey. She's got red hair and she's tough, tough as nails. Maureen O'Hara was one of my favorite actresses, you know, and she's known to be the only one that would put John Wayne in his place. And,
well, and we need more heroines out there.
Oh yeah.
So you know, so keep at it. And it's like what we were talking earlier. I could tell when I was reading it. It had a very cinematic feel, right?
I'm a videographer.
Right. So right, and it was, you know, what happens next, and a lot of action, and just a lot going on, and very fast. And I'm thinking that what an editor would say is, got to take a breath. And so we can see her, we can see what's happening. What you were saying earlier, how does she feel about what's happening?
Yeah.
Right? How does she feel about what's happening? And there's a lot of stuff, a lot of thinking that she's doing, but what's really in her heart?
We got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think you're right. You've gotten me to do some rewriting. There was one scene you haven't gotten to yet, with a plane crash with one of these ladies in it, and it took me a couple pages to write it. Like you say, I write fast. And I was looking at it, thinking about it, I says, you know, if I was in a plane crash and smoke coming out from underneath the cowling, and the guy next to me is all broken and battered and I'm not, and the whole thing is it's up to me.
Yeah.
You know, would I just say, oh yeah, I'll drag him out and we'll take care of him later, and we'll go for help if I need to.
So how would that make, right, how is she feeling?
Okay, it looks like I'm down to a minute, and it's went by so fast. You're such an interesting person to talk to.
Oh, thank you.
If anybody else out there would like to come here and talk, you don't have to be an author. I need some people that are trying to write and are, like myself, or maybe struggling a bit, or need some advice, or need to talk about what it's like to write, and maybe bookstore owners or librarians or things like that. Yeah. Would love to have you on. And so I guess I better wrap this up. I talk too much. And until next time, this is Jerry Vaisey, and I have Tammy with me, and I can't write right, but she sure can. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.